Hey, I have a very special guest today, Miss Renee Dore. She's not also a real estate agent at Keaty Real Estate, but also a staging consultant, and she's here to talk everything staging with me today.
Yeah.
So, as a real estate agent, what is your experience with staging?
So my experience with staging, before I got into staging, I was just an agent. I was walking through many properties with buyers, and I saw tremendous potential with some of these listings that, clients that are very visual, they need that extra aid. And so I knew there was a need for it, which got me into staging consultation, where I started to help sellers before they even go on the market, prep their house in different ways.
Okay. As a staging consultant, can you give us some tips and tricks of staging?
Yes, absolutely. So one tip whenever it comes to staging is to bring different elements of nature, maybe a little bit of greenery, some pops of color throughout your space to help showcase the property better.
Okay, great. As a real estate professional, I know I utilize stagers in multitudes of ways, because staging is not just you're gonna come put some stuff and be done.
Right.
Stagers can be used as a real estate professional, can be used as one of your team members, because sometimes you don't want to tell the seller some negative stuff. Give us a tool, like I use the walk and talk, for example. Can you explain what the walk and talk is and how can it be used as a real estate professional's advantage?
So as a staging consult, I do walk and talks where I go to the property and meet up with the clients before it's listed, and we'll have a little conversation. I'll walk through the space, see what they're working with now, and give them tips, tricks, and advice on how they can better their property. And if you're a list person, you're really gonna love this, because I walk through each space taking notes, and whenever I'm done, the next day I'll send you a little booklet, and you can go through each space and check off each item that I suggest. Sometimes it's just as simple as, making a few modifications, and then sometimes the property really needs staging items, in which I supply that as well.
Okay. So it's not just, you're gonna replace all my furniture. That's what was the stigma of staging. You're gonna replace all my furniture, and I'm gonna pay all this exorbitant amount of money that's not really what it is.
No, it doesn't. Not every property needs that. Sometimes it's little tweaks, and sometimes it's just being that voice of reason. Hey guys, you have lovely things. You've lived here. It's livable, but now what do you turn your home into a product? And that product needs to sell. So let's change it up a little bit and remove some of those personal items and get you to where other people can envision their selves living there.
So what's your goal going into a room? Like when you go into a room, what are you looking? What is your goal in that room?
My goal, let's just give an example, the living room. When I walk into a living room as a buyer's agent, as a buyer, as someone viewing a property, I want to be able to navigate the space. So I want room to walk around. I want to see the highlight focuses, like the fireplace. So we want to bring attention to those key items of the room. So if we're dealing with a fireplace, we want to showcase that. If we're dealing with a large room, we want to show how big it is. We want to kind of remove a lot of extra things. We want to see how much air and space it has. So we'll bring in some natural light. So I want to make sure the things that drew you to the property is also going to draw the next buyer. So we need to just highlight those areas.
So Renee, I want to go back a little bit and ask about, you mentioned turning the home into a product. And can you explain that a little bit more? Like what's the steps? What's the steps that you go to turning that home into a product? And then why is that important for the buyer?
So we want to make the buyer feel at ease when they walk through the property. We want them to walk in and say, wow, I can envision myself living here. But if we were to not do that process, and I'm a buyer walking into your house, and your day-to-day items, maybe you throw your bags right by the door, and you have this little quirky thing because you got kids, and we need to have this set up because it makes it easier and efficient for me. That buyer doesn't need to see that. They want to see a nice clean slate. They don't want to know, how you made it work for you and your family. They want to be able to envision themselves living there. So the more we remove that doesn't need to be in a property to sell it, the better. They can, it's going to be ready for them to move in.
Yeah, taking that emotion away from, like that emotion out of the home. And
Yeah, think about it whenever you're walking through the property, and let's say someone came to you and they want to sell the property as is. They have a full family, they got photos that they spent so much time and energy doing, and they have it nicely displayed on the wall. Well, as a buyer, when I'm walking through the property, I'm looking at them. You know, this is a small town. Do I know them? Now I'm more distracted on your family photos than seeing, okay, is this living room big enough for our needs? Does the layout work?
yeah, they're looking through the photo albums.
Yeah, you only have so much time in a space, so we really need to wow those upcoming clients. So they're using their time wisely, doesn't make sense, and not worried about the small details that have no effect on their sale.
Let's talk about working with photographers, because we know that pictures sell the house, right? You got to get somebody in that, staging and making it, but without them coming to the house and viewing the house, how do you, as a stager, work with a photographer?
So it's definitely a collaborative effort. We have to work hand in hand. I can't just go in and do my job and then say the photographer's going to come in and do their job. I have to basically put myself in their shoes. How would they most likely angle this shot? And whenever I get that, okay, like let's say we're going to focus on this corner, now my staging stuff caters around that.
Yeah.
So if we know most likely the photographer will not get this little tiny nook and cranny closet, I'm not going to focus on that. We're going to put it towards the efforts that will be showcasing the property, these big key features that,
like highlight that.
Yeah, that'll highlight the space, because that's the first impression. Those photos draws your attention, and that's what you see first before you even step foot on the property. So the photos have to make sense, and the staging has to be a collaborative effort with the photos.
So Renee, what advice would you give new agents preparing for a listing?
So as a new agent, whenever you're getting ready for a listing, you want to have a team behind you, one, to show authority, and two, to have prep so that you can put the best product possible on the market. That way everything goes smoothly. You have nice photos, you get good interaction with your showings, and you go under contract quicker than expected. And some of those team members involve a great photographer, a videographer, a staging consultant, a cleaning crew, that's big, and also just knowing your info about your market, which you can easily get from either research or dealing with other agents on your team helping you out with numbers.
What's something that some people don't think, like, man, here's a good tip for staging?
My top 2 tips for staging is don't forget about the exterior. Most people just focus so much on the interior, they kind of forget about your landscaping, your cleaning your windows, and curb appeal. And also just less is more.
Hey, so Renee, tell me the importance of curb appeal.
Curb appeal is very important for a couple different reasons. One, a lot of times when I have clients that have interest in the property, I tell them to go drive by. It doesn't mean I scheduled a showing. It doesn't mean I even called the agent to inquire about it. So you have people that are unknowing to you passing by the property, judging your property. And so if it doesn't even meet the curb appeal, they're not even coming inside. So that's the first thing. Second thing is a lot of it is minimum effort, but big reward. So cutting the grass, not that hard to do. You were going to do it anyways. But if you don't have it kept up, well, now automatically you think a little bit less of the property if we have weeds growing and unmaintained lawn. Freshening up the door. That's the first thing people step through the property. And sometimes we have to dilly-dally with the keys a little bit, and your buyer's looking around and they're seeing cobwebs, wasps, chipped paint, dirt there. That's the first impression, so don't forget about those things. Lighting brings out a lot, maybe some security lights, pressure washing helps a bunch, and windows. So, don't forget about those windows, because that's what brings in the natural light when they're walking throughout the space.
And you mentioned your second tip was less is more. Can you explain a little bit more about less is more?
I explain more about less is more, yes. Okay, so whenever I'm going into a property and doing a staging consultation, if you're a seller and you're motivated, you should already be planning to move your stuff out. I'm just helping you advance that step. Let's already start packing up those things. Yeah. Especially your personal items that have maybe photos, maybe memorabilia, anything valuable. Start taking those things out, because the less we have in the property the easier it is for buyers to navigate it, the cleaner it looks, the less distractions for buyers. So I find less is more in a good bit of scenario.
Now, what do you tell your sellers that say, I don't have anywhere to put this stuff?
You know, if they're really, battling me on, I don't have a space to put it, I'm just a frugal person. I will get down to the nitty gritty of the numbers. Okay, if you rent out this storage unit, you're only spending X amount compared to if we don't, and you show your property and it lasts longer than expected, we're making more mortgage payments. So where are we really putting our money and where's it going to save you in the long run? So there's little small things, and it's not anything to be rude about. It's just saying, if you're worried about money and you're worried about time, this is the most efficient way to do it. Let's put it in storage, or talk to a friend and family and put it in their space.
I always tell the sellers, we don't want to look back and say, I wish I would have staged the house. I wish I would have put all my stuff in storage. I wish I would have done the curb appeal. I wish I would have had that staging consultant, right? You never want to have to say that, right?
Right. Whenever you're an agent, you're talking to your seller, just give them all the opportunities. This is all that we have to offer. This is all that's in my tool tips and tricks backpack and my team that supplies. What do you want to utilize? And put it in their court. And when they say, no, I don't want to do these things, say, okay, we could not do these things, but we may end up having to do them later.
Renee, can you tell us the positives and negatives of being a staging consultant?
So the positives of being a staging consultant is being able to go and talk directly to the sellers, giving them, great advice on how to better their property and get them more money in a, shorter time frame. That's the obvious. The negative to being a staging consultant is I have to share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly of your property. I have to be honest and true. Sometimes people don't want to hear that, and sometimes agents don't want to tell their sellers, certain things that, as a bystander, we're going to comment on. So I am that voice of reason. I'm trying to help you guys sell it. I have no skin in the game, so it doesn't hurt me to tell you the honest truth. Obviously, my delivery is very kind and just, but as an agent, you don't have to deal with that.
I know many times as a listing agent, I would tell a seller something. Hey, I'm just gonna give an example. Hey, you might want to, you might need to paint your cabinets. They're a little dated, they're a little dark, and for some reason, sellers look at the listing agent, they don't kind of believe them at sometimes. But then when a staging consultant would tell them, hey, you might need to paint. I've had this happen many times, and then they end up painting their cabinets.
Some sellers are...
It's just kind of that backup.
Yeah, some sellers are very resistant, and they need that repeat of comment for it to really click. And so you can be the first one. I, as a staging consultant, can be the second person. And if they still don't do it, the feedback from the clients or for the buyers will most likely help.
It's kind of like that social proof. It's kind of like, it's like, hey, oh, you have somebody else telling me, another professional came in and also said this, then we might need to consider doing that.
Yeah, after being a dead horse, eventually the sellers get the hint that either we're going to lose money because of this, or let's just bite the bullet and move forward. So
some other negatives and positives of being a staging.
Some negatives of being a stager is sometimes, I can bring the pretty little details in, but sometimes that's just not enough. Sometimes sellers really have to put in the elbow grease or outsource to get the property to where it needs to be. I'm there to help them, acknowledge some of the spaces that need addressing, but sometimes sellers do have to put effort. It's not all our photographer, videographer, agent, and staging that can cover that. Sometimes they do need to put a little bit more effort to that.
Yeah, they gotta put some
elbow grease,
some lipstick on that pig.
Yeah.
So what's some of the rewards of staging?
So some of the really exciting rewards is whenever we put so much effort in on the front end and the sellers take our advice, just blindly. They just take we want to do professional photos, the staging, the cleaning, all these things. And, they get exhausted after a while. But when that photo set comes back to their inbox and they open it up and they say, wow, I would never recognize my property. This looks amazing. I'm so glad we did all your steps. We have so much excitement for putting our house on the market.
Yeah, that is a good feeling.
It is a good feeling.
Especially when they're like, oh, whose house is this? They don't recognize it for a second.
Or they say that they want to stay. I've had that before. I say, sorry, you can't. It's going. We're moving.
Yeah, we're selling it. As a listing agent, one of the key members of my team, and I've used you several times, is a stager. You got to find somebody on your team to help you with this. Unless you're somebody yourself, but you still, even as a staging consultant and a listing agent, you sometimes hire out a stager, right?
Yeah, sometimes if the project is too big, sometimes homes are huge, and I just may not have enough inventory, so I can outsource. And so before I started doing staging myself, I used to use a different company, and it gets pricey.
Yeah, I mean, it gets pricey, but
it's worth it, especially if you have a unique property that has a need for so much square footage. And we're really talking about a unique property that needs maybe outside stuff, pool stuff, 2-story house, those bigger projects.
Can get there, yeah.
Yeah, but they need it, because if you're walking through a huge house with nothing in it, it just feels huge, and it may not show as well.
What's a really good feeling as a listing agent is, I hate to say this, but going to a house that's already been listed, that didn't have professional pictures and didn't have it professionally staged, and then you bring that in and it sells within like a couple of days, right?
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, because it's like, you almost feel like you're walking in on a hidden gem.
Right.
This house has so much potential, but yet they're just missing that little touch.
Like they got some cheap pictures.
Yeah.
They didn't stage it. They didn't even get the right angles. And you step in and say, all right, we're gonna put a little elbow grease in it, get a professional stager in here, and make the pictures pop. And within a few days, they get an offer, and sometimes higher offer than the original.
It's the competitive edge.
Right.
It speaks for itself. It's well worth it, in my opinion. And it's unfortunate for the seller that they had to go through that first, uncomfortable period of putting their house out there with bad photos, dark photos. They probably didn't get nearly as much traffic as they deserved. And then it all could have been down the front end. It could have been easily avoided. They could have saved themselves some mortgage payments. They could have saved themselves time and energy, and just cut to the chase, put a good product out, and you will see results.
Yeah, I would say if you're a new agent or even other listing agent that doesn't use a stager, if you want the competitive edge, you want the market share, one of the people on your team has to be a staging consultant.
Has to be paired with a really good photographer, because staging will get you so far, but if you have bad photos, then what are you really helping? So it has to be, it definitely goes hand in hand. So having that full team that work well together will set you up for success.